This is Inside the Americas, coming up. South Carolina is the latest state to curb abortion in the U.S. The Senate passing a bill to ban the practice after 6 weeks when most women still don't know they're pregnant. Then, as bird flu cases rise in Brazil, the country declares a 6-month animal health emergency. There have now been at least 8 cases of H5N1 in wild birds in 2 Brazilian states. Analysis with Olivia Salazar-Winspear on the way. And we'll bring you a special report from Oregon, where a pioneering mental health experiment using legalized magic mushrooms gets one step closer to reality. I'm Jeannie Godula. This week, the southern state of South Carolina voted to ban abortion after 6 weeks. Now, that's before many women even know that they're pregnant. It's the latest in a long line of states to either partially or fully ban the procedure. Half of all U.S. states have now passed or attempted to pass restrictions on abortion since Roe v. Wade was overturned last year.
One after another, South Carolina senators voted to ban abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy. With the clack of a gavel, the bill passed under the watchful eye of activists outside the chamber.
Senate were being ordered by a vote of 27 to 19.
The state's governor then tweeted that he'd sign the bill into law as soon as possible. For anti-abortion senators, all of them men, the bill's passage is a long-awaited success. They've tried 3 times in the past year to get such restrictions in place.
Carolinians value life, want to see laws in place that protect an unborn child.
Previous attempts had managed to be blocked by the sole female lawmakers. Called the sister senators, 3 are Republicans. They not only filibustered the bill, but they also lobbied unsuccessfully for a compromise for banning after 12 and not 6 weeks, when most women don't know they're pregnant.
It's so disheartening to think that 41 men in this body can make decisions for women and girls that will impact women and girls across our state for generations to come.
Since the overturning of Roe v. Wade, 14 states have near or total bans in the U.S. South Carolina was an outlier in the South because its Supreme Court reversed a previous 6-week ban. But now its sole female justice has retired. And as the U.S. investigative nonprofit ProPublica notes, members of the legislature lobbied hard and successfully for her replacement to be a male justice, paving the way for its Supreme Court to potentially uphold such restrictions for a long time to come.
Our picture of the week takes us to Mexico with a look at this impressive volcanic eruption in the state of Puebla. 3 million people living near Mexico's nearly 18,000-foot Popocatépetl volcano are facing evacuation orders as it continues to spew ash across the region. Schools have been forced to close and hundreds of flights delayed or canceled. The volcano is one of the most active in the world and has recently experienced an even bigger uptick in activity. Next to Brazil, a country that has now recorded its first cases of bird flu. That news could be catastrophic for Brazil, which is also the world's largest exporter of poultry. France 24's Olivia Salazar-Winspear has been keeping a close eye on this story for us. She joins me now on the set for more. Olivia, what's the current situation in Brazil?
So now, Brazilian authorities have registered 8 cases of bird flu in 2 states of the country, Rio de Janeiro and Espírito Santo, which are both in the southeast. And as you say, this is the first time they've ever recorded the H5N1 virus there. It is important to underline that these cases have been recorded in wild birds, seabirds. So that's not something that affects farms and therefore food. It has allowed Brazil to avoid the trade bans that have hit other countries because it goes on the guidelines of the World Organization for Animal Health. So as far as exports go, it's business as usual, which is hugely important for that sector because Brazil is, as you mentioned, the world's largest chicken meat exporter. Last year, they made $9.7 billion from those sales. 35% of all the the chicken we consume in the world comes from Brazil. And it was already well known for its soy and beef exports. Brazil wasn't always in pole position for chicken meat. Ironically, that happened last year because of outbreaks of avian flu in other countries, in competitors. And so their sales went up by 30% last year. But as I say, so far, the economic activity is safe because they've got the green light from that organisation, and no other country has announced that they'll stop importing Brazilian chicken.
So what's the Brazilian government's policy on this? What measures have been taken?
Well, the Agriculture Minister, Carlos Favaro, gave a prime-time television interview this week in which he said that a state of animal health emergency has been declared for 180 days, so 6 months. That'll allow them to reinforce the testing and preventative measures. They're having a cross-ministerial approach. So you've got the Agricultural Ministry, the Health Ministry, Environmental Ministry, and even the Ministry of Tourism, because they're saying that in a country where many visitors are on beaches, on the coastline, and there could be dead marine life, including birds, they have to watch out for that as well. Now, Brazil does overall have the necessary infrastructure to tackle this, and that's been bolstered recently with the arrival of the Lula administration. The government raised funding massively to increase testing capacity in their federal labs, a network of federal labs, and they increased the overall budget of the Animal and Plant Health and Inspection Centre. That went up by 12%. They've already culled at least 30 birds which were suspected of contamination. And another positive, another thing that Brazil had on its side is they were able to get a head start on this emergency response due to contaminations elsewhere. That is like more than 75 outbreaks in 9 countries in Central and South America, including in Brazil's neighbour, Argentina. So the lab workers there in Brazil were already on high alert at the end of April.
What about the human risk factor in all of this? Is there one?
Well, we have heard that this is not a highly contagious virus. It shows up in humans who've had very close and prolonged contact with the birds. So people, for example, working in poultry factories. In other countries, there haven't been cases in Brazil so far. The Health Ministry identified 33 people who could have come into contact with those birds. They tested them for the H5N1 virus last week. Those tests came back negative. More people are still being tested, around 30, but the consensus is that the risk is fairly low. There's also been a push to inform Brazilians, the public, about not touching or approaching any wild birds they might see dead on the beach or in wildlife. And authorities have been emphasising again that this doesn't affect chicken meat or eggs on sale in supermarkets, which, as a result, shouldn't affect the prices of those products either.
Thanks so much for that, Olivia. Olivia Salazar-Windsor with that look at the bird flu situation in Brazil. Thanks. Now, when you think of magic mushrooms, you usually think of America's 1960s psychedelic counterculture. Today, though, campaigners are fighting to make the mushrooms legal to help people struggling with mental illness. The U.S. state of Oregon is at the forefront of the movement, and its pioneering experiment with legalized magic mushrooms got one step closer to reality this week. The very first facilitators who will accompany clients as they experience the drug received the very first state licenses.
The U.S. state of Oregon is exploring the therapeutic power of magic mushrooms. Tori Armbrust is at this laboratory getting some analysed. She grows them commercially and does so legally. In other parts of the United States, she would be in big trouble.
I think we need to show the government and have our community have positive experiences with it, and I hope one day that it's all legal.
Oregon is defying a federal ban to allow people over 21 to use magic mushrooms. Their active ingredient is psilocybin. It's the subject of increasing research interest, a promising possible treatment for depression, addiction or post-traumatic stress. Army veteran Tobias Shea used mushrooms years before Oregon's legalization. At the time, he was seeking therapeutic help for depression from the Department of Veteran Affairs.
I went through the VA first, didn't find a lot of effective therapy through the VA, and started kind of exploring alternative options, and that's how I found psilocybin and magic mushrooms.
No prescription is needed, but use has to go ahead under the auspices of a certified facilitator for counseling purposes. Psychotherapist Sarah Zogby is training to do just that.
Oregon's on the front line, and Oregon's really going to be looked at nationally as a real model for how does this roll out? How do we responsibly bring psilocybin into the mainstream conversation of healing?
In November, Colorado voted to decriminalize hallucinogenic mushrooms and create treatment centers. A dozen other states, including New York and California, are considering similar measures.
We'll wrap up now with our number of the week, 161 million. That is the sale price of the iconic Flatiron Building in New York City. The triangle-shaped property was auctioned off to a group of investors after the previous bidding's winner failed to come up with the first payment. The 121-year-old Flatiron was designed by renowned Chicago architect Daniel Burnham and was one of the first skyscrapers in Manhattan. It's been empty, though, since its last tenant left in 2019. Its 5 owners could not agree on what to do with the building, and so a judge ordered its auction. Curious to see what it turns into. We'll be keeping an eye on that for you here on Inside the Americas. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.